So the subject that most mainstream media would rather we never, ever discussed at all is back in the news. Yep, it's immigration, because they can't avoid the fact that on Friday, Saturday and Sunday of last week, approximately 200 people a day crossed the English Channel in small inflatable dinghies. When I say small, they're not so small anymore, but I'll come back to that in a moment. And this week, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, is going to present new legislation before the House of Commons. If you thought back in 2016 you were voting in the Brexit referendum to take back control of our borders, and if you believe every time the Home Secretary tells us she's getting tough on immigration and putting in place a firm but fair system, if you believe any of that, my advice to you is please don't, and take whatever you hear in the House of Commons this week with a large pinch of salt. Let's deal to begin with illegal immigration. Last year, I went out into the English Channel. I made those films that I posted here, which showed a large number of small dinghies coming across the channel, 16 in a boat, 18 in a boat. I predicted when I went out in May that over 5,000 people would come last year. 8,500 came, all of whom have to be housed somewhere. Many are put in 4-star hotels, but increasingly what's happening is companies are buying up properties, subdividing them into 5 or 6 separate living accommodations, and these are now being scattered all over the country. At the moment, those that have come across the channel, other failed asylum seekers, we're housing over 60,000 people at simply the most enormous cost. But all the way through this, Priti Patel makes tough statements. We're going to put the RAF in the channel, we're going to use drones, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to send people back. None of it ever happens. And even when she tries to deport people, which is not very often, she ends up in court because, of course, we've stayed part of the European Convention on Human Rights, and the lefty lawyers can stop this from happening, stop these deportations time after time. So where are we in 2021? Well, let me tell you, the numbers that have come through Dover, through that reception centre so far this year, are more than double what they were at the same time last year. Well over 6,000 people, getting over 7,000 people have now come across the English Channel so far this year. And I've been predicting that this year it will be 20,000 that come. But I may be wrong, and here's why. The new boats they're using are completely different. We're seeing over the last few weeks a totally new type of dinghy that is being used. It's 11 meters long. One of them had 70 people on the other day that came into Dover. Another one, similar boat, onto the shores at Dungeness, and that had over 50 in it. Interestingly, all men. All 50 were young men between the ages of 18 and 28 years old, coming from all over the world, hardly any of whom would ever have qualified to be genuine refugees. And once they were walking up the shingle, they're all high-fiving each other because they know they've hit the jackpot. They know they're not going to be sent anywhere. With the advent of these new boats, and if we get a very calm summer and autumn, my guess is it could be well in excess of 20,000 that come this year. Now, Priti's going to tell us this week, in future, those that come could be arrested when they arrive and face up to 4 years in prison. It will never happen because the prisons are full already. And as I've already said, because of the Human Rights Act and the incorporation of the European Convention, it simply won't be allowed to happen. And nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to improve. In fact, the numbers that come are likely to get even bigger. And the only policy is to take the boats under tow, like the Australians did with those boats coming from Indonesia, and take them back to France. But that would take political will. That would take a prime minister backing up a Home Secretary that really wanted to do something. So please don't take anything she says seriously this week. It's the same old, same old. It's as if I talk tough on an issue, the problem will go away. But what virtually nobody seems to have twigged at all is this. I said in 2004, when 8 former communist countries were admitted to the European Union, that it would lead to a massive inflow of people into this country. The Blair government said, oh, no, it'll just be an extra 13,000 a year. Well, we know that large numbers of people came. I also said at the start of 2014 that the admission and the opening of the doors to Romania and Bulgaria would lead to a large influx. I made the point that those former communist countries had not made the transition to being Western democracies, that organised crime was very, very prevalent in both of those countries, and that the minimum wage in those countries was often an eighth of what it was in the United Kingdom. It seemed obvious to me, if you say to people in poor countries they can move to relatively richer countries, they will do so. Now, I said at the time that I thought 250,000 would come from Romania alone, and I said that having visited and travelled around Romania. I don't think I ever received as much abuse from political opponents or mainstream media as I did over those comments about the numbers that would come from Romania, and about the fact that, yes, of course, there'd be lots of very good, hardworking, decent people, but also the criminal elements would use this opportunity. After all, the streets of London are richer pickings. I don't think I've ever received so much abuse for a comment that I've made. Well, as you know, EU citizens living in the UK have had to register to say that they're here, and the cut-off date finished last week. I was completely wrong about 250,000 coming from Romania. So far, 920,000, yep, we're pushing 1 million from Romania alone have registered. Do you remember that number in the referendum? There were 3 million EU citizens living in Britain. They revised that, if you remember, to 3.7 million. 6 million, over 6 million have registered. So at no point have the government been straight with us. If you believe anything you see in the press, that people are leaving, they're going back to the EU, Britain's become a hostile country, the numbers tell a very, very different story indeed. This is completely out of control. And I wonder, have any of those people who said I was wrong about this, have any of them apologised? No. Have you seen any national debate about this on television? No. Though hopefully the advent of GB News will at least allow these conversations to take place. No, no one's apologised. No one said anything. It's out of control. Our population, which we thought was 67 million, is without doubt in excess of 70 million. But you'll hear from Priti Patel this week. We're putting in place a firm but fair immigration policy. In fact, what we're doing is opening up immigration beyond the EU to the rest of the world. We've lowered the qualification barriers for those that come. We've lowered the amount of money people need to earn or be expected to earn to come into the country. And I think we're going to see legal and illegal immigration hit record numbers over the next few years under a Conservative government with a Home Secretary who purports to be tough, a Prime Minister who towards the end of the referendum talked about controlling our borders, promised in the Conservative manifesto that numbers would be reduced, and actually couldn't care less. And I think one of the reasons is so many of the big backers, business backers of the Conservative Party, financial backers of the Conservative Party, frankly want as much cheap labour as they can possibly get. Well, this may come back to bite them at some point before too long. Not long back, we had the Chesham and Amersham by-election, which the Tories lost. One of the big reasons was house building and planning in the home counties. People living in their rural villages do not want to see massive housing developments. But when you realise that our population has risen by 8 to 10 million over the course of the last 20 years, you understand why there is pressure on housing. But you won't hear that argument made by mainstream media. You won't hear that argument made by virtually anybody in Parliament or any party political leader. They're hoping, since the Brexit vote, that we won't worry our little heads about this, that somehow we won't find out what the truth is. Well, my job with these videos is to give you the numbers and to give you the truth and to tell you, to pressure your MPs, to get them to explain to you why there is the chronic housing shortage that we're currently experiencing. And when they come back to you with something that is simply untrue, you've got the facts, you've got the reasons to pick them up and to make it clear that what is going on is unacceptable. This is not, absolutely not, a comment on so many people that have come, many of whom are great, some of whom I've employed myself. Often they're very, very good, hard-working people. But that is not the point. The quality of life of people in this country in the last 20 years has deteriorated. Children cannot expect the same things their parents and grandparents had. They can't get on the housing ladder. Very often, you can't get your kid into a local school because it's already full. Whether it's traffic on the roads, congestion, our quality of life is being diminished by a massively increasing population. We have a population crisis, and since the turn of the century, that massive rise of people, minimum 8 million, but probably 10 or more, since all of that began 20 years ago, that massive rise, 80% of it is directly accountable to immigration, those that have come and the children that they've had. And I'm making the argument that England's green and pleasant land will be a building site if we carry on with current government policy. So please use whatever influence you can with your MP. They think you haven't noticed. My job is to try and make you notice and try and do something about it.
Thank you for watching this video. Now, to make sure you don't miss any future videos, please click the subscribe icon and the notification bell. Until next time, when I give you another story that mainstream media dare not cover.